Hi, I'm James Taylor.
And I'm Alison Burns.
And together we are
the Ethical Futurists.
Now, you're listening to the Ethical Futurists Podcast, where we dive into the world of sustainability, ethics, and why these ideas today are more important than ever before. Now, join us as we engage with leading thinkers, with business leaders, with academics, with entrepreneurs, with investors, and change makers to uncover the latest ideas shaping a more ethical and sustainable future. We're going to be covering a lot of different things in this podcast as well.
We are indeed. From sustainability, innovation to future trends and ESG.
Our conversations span a wide array of topics, including renewable energy. We're going to be looking at clean tech, ethical investing,
food systems, and much more.
Yeah. In each episode, we explore really crucial issues such as carbon emissions, the circular economy. We're going to be talking about rewilding,
net zero carbon goals,
and the future of food and energy, something that Alison and I are really passionate about.
So whether you're interested in lab-grown meat, alternative proteins, sustainable finance, or climate-related risk, we've got you covered. Are you looking to secure a keynote speaker who's well-versed in sustainability, ESG, or any of the engaging topics featured on the Ethical Futurists podcast? Well, look no further. Connect with the experts at MENA Speakers to book your ideal speaker today.
Just go to MENA-speakers.com. That's MENA-speakers.com. Alternatively, you can drop them an email at book@MENA-speakers.com to book the perfect speaker for your next event. Today, we are delighted to have a very special guest. Now, before we get into this interview, Alison and I have to hold our hands up. We are fans of this brand, this company. We have stayed at this company's hotels and resorts, so we may be a little bit biased here, possibly. So just putting that out there. But today we have Bryanne Tait, who's the Global Senior Director of Sustainability at Jumeirah. Bryanne, welcome to the Ethical Futurists Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
So share with us what's going on in your world just now. What currently has your focus?
Oh, gosh. I wish I could sort of make it into a shorter list, but sustainability, as you know, is a really big topic. So net zero is really kind of one of our leading topics across the group within Jumeirah as part of the Dubai Holding group of companies. Dubai Holding have signed up to the UAE Responsible Companies Climate Pledge, which means that we're aiming for net zero by 2050, which is a tremendous challenge. One, has to sort of take that in and what it actually means. So that's probably one of the biggest areas of focus for us. But then there's a lot of other things that we're working on. So plastics in the hospitality industry. I mean, water bottles and all kinds of little bits of plastic that you see across the operation. So trying to get those out of the system is a really big area of focus for us. Sustainable food and beverage. So what we serve to our guests, how we engage with them is an important area as well. But I mean, there's numerous areas, water scarcity and water issues. I mean, an ironic topic, obviously,
in
for
Dubai.
today.
Just everyone know we're filming this after 3 days of the most water ever in rainfall here in 75 years. It's been a crazy time as well.
It has. But believe it or not, I mean, we're in the desert.
Yeah.
And regardless, I mean, we have a portfolio of 26 properties globally. And I think at least half of them are located in water scarce, locations where we face tremendous issues from climate change. So we really got to think about our operations. How do we future-proof ourselves from, the risks that climate change poses, across the board. So
now take us back. Your role is now Global Senior Director at Jumeirah. How did you come into this role? Where were you? Were you working primarily in sustainability or hospitality or a mixture of both?
Yeah, so I don't come from a hospitality background, actually. My background is in energy. I was working in the energy sector for about 10 years with Shell, doing various things related to sustainability, including building, utility scale wind farms, which was really, really exciting stuff. And then I spent about 10 years working in the multilateral sector in climate finance, so the World Bank. And so this gave me the kind of private and public sector element of it. But importantly, within both of those, those sort of positions or roles or organizations, I traveled a lot. So I was a consumer of the hospitality industry. So I could see it from the guest perspective, but really had no idea what was going on behind the scenes. So I think that was something that was interesting and a bit of a leap of faith, I think, for both of us, for someone that's atypical for, the hospitality industry to come in with something that's completely different, and then me not knowing the industry from the inside. So that's kind of where I come from. I've always been working. I've got 25 years of experience or so working in sort of climate related spaces or environmental space or sustainability in general, I guess you could say. Yeah.
But I guess one of the good things about coming in, not having that hospitality background necessarily, is you've got a beginner's mind. You've got a fresh set of eyes to the problem.
Well, that's indeed. And I think that's sort of what we were both thinking when we came together is how can I bring a new way of thinking or new business models or new partnerships or, what kind of knowledge can I bring from other industries that might be applicable? So energy efficiency that one might see in the textile sector, how does that play out in maybe, our laundry operations in the hospitality industry, working in the agricultural sector with the World Bank? And then how does that sort of play out in our F&B industry and food supply chains and proteins and all of these kinds of things. So I got a lot of sort of exposure to other industries, and I'm trying to kind of bring that and now sort of implant it in Jumeirah and see how I can bring sort of some ideas and support the journey. It's a journey. This is not going to happen overnight. But yeah.
Well, like we said, we're fans of Jumeirah, and having seen it from the customer, only the customer's point of view here. But what were the things that opened up to you when you crossed the Rubicon into the other side?
Right. Yeah. From being a guest to being on the inside of the operations. Exactly. I mean, so I kind of laugh about it looking back on it when I was sort of preparing for the interview, and I was a little bit sort of like, overconfident, thinking, oh, this is going to be a cakewalk because, it's about not washing your towels every day. You get the little message on your towel or on your pillow at nighttime that says, if you don't want your towels washed, leave them hung up or put them in the bathtub. And I thought getting rid of those little shampoo bottles and, the buffet, especially in Dubai where we're world famous.
Especially during iftar for the buffets as well.
Precisely, where food waste jumps to 80%, by the way, during Ramadan. And I can share a little bit more about food waste as well, which is one thing that does keep me awake at night. And so I thought it was going to be quite simple, like just looking at it from the outside. But that once I got inside the operations and could see the complexity and the depth, it really highlighted for me what you don't see, the supply chains for where do we get our seafood from? And is it certified? Is it caught, in a sustainable way? Where do we get our eggs from? Are they cage free? Are they, organic? Are they, what are some of the impacts environmentally, but then also socially? Like, we get asked questions by, industry experts. Do you know where your coffee comes from? And is it fair trade? And so are the people that are employed in these industries getting a fair wage for what they're for the work? So it really gets into the nitty gritty of going through, and I've got a spreadsheet of something like 30,000 rows of food and beverage ingredients that have been purchased over a certain period of time, and just trying to understand where do we procure what we use in our operations as an example. So supply chains become very important. Just stuff that you just don't even think about as a guest. You just you check in, you have a great night's sleep, and hopefully you get some great service by Jumeirah. I'm sure they treat you well, and you have a wonderful meal at our in some cases Michelin star restaurants. But there's so much that goes on behind the scenes.
Are you seeing a shift in demand, and more particularly in the food part? Because there are various reports that with your sustainability lens on, various reports that are not disputed, but the animal agriculture, for example, is one of the main destructive elements in terms of the environment, and any kind of move or shift away from that conception that good food is linked to meat and animal agriculture. Are you seeing a shift towards more plant-based?
100%, absolutely. Good. Yeah. Over 2023, for the first time, Jumeirah, we sat down and actually said, okay, let's put a strategy together. Up until then, it was a little bit piecemeal here and there. Last year, we spent a lot of time putting our baseline together and setting KPIs. And in doing so, we looked at our competitors and our peers and others in the industry and what kind of KPIs they were using. And one of them is, in fact, is actually plant-based or vegan or vegetarian options on menus and a certain percentage. And so that's become one of our KPIs, is actually increasing the menu options for vegan, vegetarian, and plant-based. A, there's a demand for it, but B, it's also part of being a responsible supplier within the industry, and then offering our guests a unique experience that, good food doesn't need to be a Wagyu beef, steak or a, sea bass toothfish that is on the endangered species list, for example. And so we can offer a wonderful dining experience, but still have sustainable options. So absolutely, that is a shift, and that's a shift that we're proactively working towards and have set targets for as well. So it may not be easy, but it's something that we have to work on. And the proteins, food and beverage globally, the food industry is responsible for 45% of emissions, the majority of which is related to the beef sector. Right?
It's very harmful. Yeah.
Very, very. And I don't think anyone really realizes what the impact of beef really is. So we have to sort of think about more plant-based, options. How do we
it's also as well, it's kind of encouraging your customers, because it's almost like you're taking them on that journey by them visibly seeing those options. With a bit of exploit. If they're not there in front of you, you don't have that option. I mean, we're totally up for alternative proteins, and you mentioned that earlier.
And we had guests on this series of a company here in the region, Switch Foods, who make a plant-based meat.
It's pea protein.
Pea protein, and actually,
it's amazing.
It's unlike we're three of us, I think, from the West, and we're used to like burgers and things. So, and that's often not those kind of options. But here in the region where they're eating, you have more like kebabs and kibbeh and all these different things.
But they're using the pea protein to make the cultural dishes.
Yep.
And innovation. So I don't know about you, but the innovation, I think, is there for the taking in terms of the creativity of the menu. Because now you've got all these other ingredients to be creative with.
Absolutely. And I mean, just a sort of anecdotal sort of side note from my personal life, my son and I were walking through the local grocery store, and he came with me to kind of do the grocery shopping, which he likes to do every once in a while. And they were giving out samples at the end of one of the aisles of chicken nuggets. And of course, this is one of his favorite foods as a 9-year-old. Chicken nuggets are pretty high on the favorite list. And so I grabbed one and gave it to him and said, "Here, have a taste of the chicken nuggets they're selling." And he was like, "That is amazing. It's the best chicken nugget I've ever had." And it was plant-based.
Perfect.
And so you don't necessarily notice the difference in terms of taste and quality. And sometimes it might be superior, actually. So I think it's about educating and surprising. And this is part of our sort of ethos and spirit, which is surprise and delight our guests. And so how can we sort of engage guests on that learning journey and give them something that might surprise them and still deliver that sort of luxurious experience.
So you mentioned luxury there, and I think of Jumeirah as a luxury brand and as a luxury place to go and stay. And we often hear like luxury and sustainability not together, or almost at opposite ends. So can you tell us about your thoughts on that? And specifically because here in this region, your hotels, you have lots of different demographics that are coming into the hotel. You have a lot of younger couples that are coming, younger families as well from different parts. So what is that mix that you're seeing between luxury and sustainability? What does that mean for you?
Yeah, I think that's a really, really important point. And that's one of the things that I'm working hard to kind of myth bust on, which is that sustainability and luxury are two mutually exclusive concepts. And they're not necessarily. And they are, absolutely they're not. And especially when we think about the new generation, where it's kind of like Gen Y, Gen X, mostly Gen Z and Gen Y, right? That are kind of the up and coming demographic, and they're looking for sustainable options, but they've also got the budget, right? Where they want to go luxury, but they also want it sustainable. So we're actually seeing that shift in demographic from the kind of like old school kind of money where, we don't care about sustainability, we've just got money to spend. But rather that kind of shift in the demographic is actually starting to happen. And that's having an impact on the industry at large, not just for Jumeirah, but in general. I would say the luxury category of hospitality is seeing that shift in those younger generations, looking for that combination of they want experience, not stuff. So they want to have an experience, and they want to have a sustainable experience. So that's where, for example, we have our 20 going on 20 years as of this year, our Dubai turtle rehabilitation project, where we rehabilitate endangered species of turtles. More than 2,000 turtles have been rescued to date over the last 20 years. And we have touch points where guests can come and sort of get involved, learn about the turtles, learn about what's causing their extinction, why are they endangered, and what are we doing to help support the regeneration of those important species for our, coastline biodiversity. So this demographic, they want experiences, they want luxury, and they also want sustainability. And so those are the three things that we try to really build together as under sort of one umbrella within Jumeirah.
And you also have this other thing going on. Shows like Succession talk a lot about this quiet luxury that's going on as well. We're kind of quite understated. And you see that here as well, especially the higher end hotels, where people aren't necessarily flaunting, but there's been thought that's gone into, let's say, that hotel suite, the materials that are being used, the fabrics that are being used in there as well, the cosmetic or the soaps as well. So you've kind of got that element.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's been also a shift in terms of how we put together. So Jumeirah, like any other sort of player in the industry, they have design or they have standards and guidelines, right, of how they operate, what products they can buy and what products they can use. For us, we also have an important wellness component of our properties. So if you go to Al Qasr, which you mentioned earlier in our conversation, there's a kids area, right? A kids club. And so how do we make sure that how we engage with families on wellness and family experiences and the sustainability element of that kind of blended into it? So there is that kind of quiet, we want a retreat. We want it to be sustainable. So we think about what we're using for the products in our rooms, the products in our spas, how are they packaged, how are we kind of reducing the footprint within these kind of little subtle touches here and there. At most of our properties now, at least within the UAE, we've converted to water bottling plants. So we no longer have those plastic water bottles, as you would see traveling around the region or even globally, where you can't drink the tap water, or you maybe shouldn't drink the tap water or don't want to drink the tap water. We've installed water bottling plants where we then produce our own water, and we have refillable water bottles. And so that's something that doesn't degrade the guest experience, right? So they still get that luxurious experience, but there's reusable water bottles, and they're not throwing out plastic water bottles, 4 or 5 a day. Or more in some cases. So it's sort of subtle differences, still delivering the luxurious experience for the guest. And so that means also a lot of research and a lot of testing and a lot of trying to figure out what's the right balance.
Purposeful luxury.
Yeah.
So it's driven by purpose because of the customers.
But that is one thing that is not something that we are willing to compromise on, is the guest experience. And so it's a luxury brand, and we want to uphold that, but still deliver something that's sustainable. So yeah,
I can see that spreadsheet with all those things on it getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
Well, actually, we're big fans because in the back in the UK, there's been a couple of vegan hotels opened up, or have vegan rooms within hotels, vegan suites. I thought, well, we're just going to go in there and just test it out. So it's not just, obviously people say plant-based, but actually plant-based is part of a vegan lifestyle where the animals aren't being commodified and we're not exploiting them. But that's a bigger thing.
Yeah.
But
and also we've had some guests on here talking about all the scope 1, scope 2, scope 3 that's going on as well. So increasingly, a lot of clients. We've had Deloitte on here on the show, Daniel Gribben, talking about they have what's called a clause 0. Where they say when they have an interaction with a client, you are also going to sign up to our sustainability standards as an organization.
It's accountability.
And and I see a lot within the travel industry where they're saying, the clients are saying, we need to start understanding the data from all of these different trips and the hotels, etc. as well. So you're kind of leaning into that just now.
Yeah, 100%. And so not just do we have sort of the B2C, so the business to consumer, where we've got direct bookings from, like we talked about earlier, sort of the Gen Z, Gen Y, but also our travel partners. So the Amexes of the world, the Expedia, Booking.com, British Airways Holidays, for example, is another very important one. They recently asked if they could do a human rights impact assessment of our operations. And so we said, absolutely. Let's our doors are open. Let us show you how, we treat our workers, what kind of accommodation we provide. We have probably the best worker accommodation in Dubai for our staff within Jumeirah. It's definitely sort of set the bar quite high. And so our travel partners are also asking for that, and it's becoming a prerequisite. And so increasingly I get questions from our sales and marketing teams that are like, do we have any certifications at this hotel? Do we have, what have we got in terms of sustainability or biodiversity programs? What can we show? Have we got any, materials we can share? So it is becoming a prerequisite now almost, especially for European booking agencies, right? Where this is part of, a regulatory function. So it's either way, whether it's a demand or a requirement, we're all kind of moving in the same direction together. So it makes business sense as well.
So is there a book that you can recommend to our listeners that you would help to enlighten them in terms of sustainability or the work that you do?
Yeah. And it's funny when I think about this question, I kind of struggled for a little bit because I hadn't really read anything that really kind of jumped out at me for a long time. But about 25 years ago, I read a book called No Logo by a Canadian author named Naomi Klein.
Great book, wonderful book.
Absolutely. That changed my world. It really opened my eyes, to think about what you're buying and what are you paying for, and the logo versus what goes on behind that logo, right? And so No Logo really kind of changed me. And anything that Naomi Klein writes is just, it's incredible, and it's so well researched, and yeah, so that really changed my world, I have to say, and I would highly recommend it. Yeah.
Well, we'll put that on the show. If people go to the show notes for this episode, you'll be able to find that. And also, if you go to the ethicalfuturist.com/books, we're going to have all the books recommended by our guests on the show. What about, is there a Netflix show or a podcast that you would recommend?
Yep, and absolutely. And I tend to watch a lot of these because it's in my blood. I feed off of this kind of stuff because I just find it like I always learn something. There's never something that I watch and not learn something from. So one of the more recent ones that I watched is a Netflix program called Eating Our Way to Extinction, which is really quite shocking when it comes to our food systems. And so that would be one that I would recommend because it really, it leaves you with a very strong impression about choices that we make in our food, what we put in our mouth.
It's very important.
Yeah.
So as we start to finish up here as well,
I have one last question.
Yeah, go for it.
I have one last question. We're obviously talking about sustainability, and I often feel that people use the word sustainability almost now, because it's used a lot, as an off-the-cuff, throwaway word. It's like, oh yeah, we're being sustainable. But they don't attach the right amount of weight, responsibility that it should carry to be truly sustainable. And with that in mind, what does an ethical and sustainable future look like for you? A future that will serve future generations well.
Yeah. So this is a tough one for me, and it's one that kind of really gets me here. And this is the kind of question where I can't help but think of my son, right? My 9-year-old son. What is his world going to look like 30 years from now? And by then it's going to be well beyond 2050, which is when we are supposed to have hit net zero, right? And there's a sort of popular saying that I try to remind myself of is that our children do not inherit the world from us. We're borrowing it from them. Right. And so it's important that we make sure that we take care of something that's not really ours in the end to own, or that we have a responsibility or obligation around. So I think in terms of the future, what does it look like? What are people going to do differently? What I would really hope is that just as you maybe walk around the grocery store and you might do a bit of price comparison, that sustainability becomes one of those key decision factors in every decision that you make every day, right? From whether or not you're going to buy that plastic bottle of water, Or are you going to remember to carry around a refillable bottle in your bag or in your backpack or something small enough? It doesn't matter what the size, but how can we make sure that this is embedded in decision making every day, especially when it comes to purchasing power? Because the suppliers, just as Jumeirah is a supplier, the real decisions and the real power is the buyer. And so that buying power is what's really going to drive change. And so if people can vote with their dollars for the more sustainable option, then I think we'll start to see, real turning of the tide when it comes to sustainability. I think the last couple of years have been a watershed moment, and this year, living in Dubai, I can see it is night and day from, 15 years ago when I first visited Dubai. And so, I think the purchasing power, people thinking about sustainability with every dollar that you spend. Don't just think about cost. Think about sustainability and what that means.
Your dollar or your dirham counts.
Every dirham counts.
Yeah. Where is the best place for people to go if they want to learn more about Jumeirah, more about the work you're doing around sustainability, and also maybe to connect with you as well?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure. So Jumeirah.com, of course, is where you can find most of the information about Jumeirah. We do have a section on our website about sustainability and some sort of specific case studies that we do, that we have on some of the initiatives and projects that we have going on. We've got our Dubai Turtle Rehabilitation Project on Facebook, so feel free to follow them there, and you get to see every little critter that gets rescued and the journey there. And in some cases, we, share the tracking data of how far they went. Some of our turtles make it as far as Vietnam. LinkedIn also is where we tend to keep our audience updated on what we're up to, both with our colleagues and sustainability. I'm on LinkedIn, of course. I think like just about everybody. So those are probably the easiest ways to find us and to follow us.
That's great.
Well, Bryanne Tait, thank you so much for being a guest on the Ethical Futurists podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. It's been really great conversation.
If you're considering making sustainability or ESG one of the themes for your next conference, your event, or perhaps a company retreat, then why not invite Alison and myself to be your keynote speakers or event MCs? We've delivered really inspiring co-keynote programs for some of the world's largest organizations from all different kinds of industries. Now, the Ethical Futurist keynote will take your audience on a journey to discover how the world's most ethical and sustainable companies are really innovating in their industries. So if you'd like to learn more about booking Alison and I as the Ethical Futurists for your next event, then simply head to theethicalfuturists.com/speaking. That's theethicalfuturists.com/speaking to schedule a call to discuss with us your next event. We're delighted that you listened to this podcast, and we'd really thank you if you could just take a moment now to subscribe to this podcast on your favorite podcast platform. Also, while you're there, why not give us a 5-star rating and leave us a review? It would really mean a lot to Alison and I. So from me, James Taylor.
And me, Alison Burns.
Thanks for listening to the Ethical Futurist Podcast.